The Jaguars, they started 2023 year at least by coming back from a 27-point deficit to the LA Chargers in the first round of the playoffs. And even though they lost to the eventual Super Bowl 57 champion Chiefs the following week, I thought, the future was much brighter for the Jacksonville Jaguars than it had been for a pretty long time. Especially considering, just a couple of years ago that they were in dark ages with the whole Urban Meyer debacle, the Urban Meyer season of 2021. Yeah, and that was an all-elite season, wasn't it? But anyway, they didn't make a whole lot of moves last offseason, entering 2023, but they were still pegged to run away with an AFC South division in rebuilding. 2 rookie quarterbacks within that division with the Colts and the Texans, and then you had a team in the Titans that was on the verge of rebuilding, which they are now, obviously. So when you look at the positives for these Jacksonville Jaguars this past season, you look at the firepower on offense. You just look at that offense that's led by Trevor Lawrence. And sure, they had a couple rough stretches in the first half of the year, but that offense started to play pretty good down the stretch in at least the first portion of the season after that rough patch. When you look at that offensive firepower with running back Travis Etienne, he was pretty much the engine of that group. He had a very effective year, going for 11 total touchdowns and having 2 signature performances against the Buffalo Bills and the Steelers on the road. Especially that Steelers game where it was very rainy. Trevor Lawrence could barely throw the ball, and he was just a very effective running back in his second full year as a starter. Meanwhile, in the passing game, Calvin Ridley, coming off a year-long suspension for gambling, a very effective receiver for Lawrence. And Evan Ingram at tight end, also a very effective weapon in both the short and downfield receiving game. And then defensively, you look at the pass rush of Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen, not the quarterback, the linebacker. They were a force in the trenches, teaming up for 27 sacks, and Allen had a really good overall year, notching 17 of those, and he started every single game, so he was always available, never injured. So that pass rushing tandem, a really good force that could always get to the quarterback. But unfortunately, though, because of what happened in the middle of the season, actually middle of the season down to the rest of the season, all that positives get overshadowed because of, the Jaguars melted. They had not just any melted, they had an all-elite meltdown to end the season. How did they begin? Well, it wasn't all that bad. The Jaguars were riding the high of a 6-2 start to start the season. And yeah, they had a brutal home beatdown off a bye week by the 49ers, who were also coming off a bye week. They did bounce back. They won the next 2 games, including a road win over the Texans, avenging that week 3 upset at home that they suffered. But just when you thought that they were going to beat the Bengals that were without Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, on a Monday night, Trevor Lawrence, speaking of, he injures his ankle in the 4th quarter. And I thought that was going to be a season-ending injury, but it was just an ankle sprain. But the Jags still lose in overtime nonetheless. So the Lawrence injury is not as serious as it was. Fans still had hoped that the Jaguars would win the division still and make a run. Nope. The Jaguars lost their next 3 games in convincing fashion, mind you, with their only win coming against the shitty Panthers. And this was without Trevor Lawrence. But hell, you're playing against a shitty Panthers team with no offense, no defense, no nothing to speak of. So, all they had to do was do what they needed to do. Beat the lowly Titans, get ready to check out for the season, and that's what would net them the AFC South. That's all they had to do. They had the whole world in their hands, but nope, they didn't do that right either, because they let the Titans outclass them. They let the Titans beat them, and the Titans avenged last year's season finale loss to complete the Jaguars' all-elite collapse. And you know who the catalyst for that collapse was? Tony Khan. Yeah, the owner of All Elite Wrestling. No, I'm just kidding. No, it wasn't. It was actually Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, he decided to play through his ankle sprain after he suffered it in that game against Cincinnati. But when he decided to do that, he pretty much lost pretty much most of the things that made him effective. The mobility out of the pocket. Because when you lose that ability to move out of the pocket, especially when you're playing on an ankle, I mean, I'm no doctor per se, but what I do notice, even as a filthy casual, is that you're limited to stay in the pocket. And his turnover issues that were already a problem early in the season became an even greater problem during this losing streak, whether it was via interception or getting strip sack fumbled. And it's just becoming apparent that these limitations were going to come with this ankle injury. So now helping the ankle issue was a shoulder injury he suffered in that Bucs game. And I guess even sitting out against the Panthers wasn't enough to stop the bleeding of his issues. So when you look at the Jaguars, they finished 9-8, but man, they had like the best odds by default because of the very weak AFC South at the time. Before the season started, and by midseason, despite their offseason approach, and Lawrence's down year, still had a chance to win it. But nope. The moment that Lawrence decided to play through his ankle sprain, try to play hero ball, and all that good jazz, it just wasn't getting any better. They collapsed. They started losing consistently and methodically. And that's when they blew it all away. Not even making the playoffs. That's what you call an all-elite meltdown in the land of all elite wrestling. Yeah, they're made for each other, man. Trevor Lawrence and Tony Khan, Doug Peterson, yeah, they're made for each other in the land of AEW. So when you look at this offseason, how do they bounce back from this collapse, this all-elite collapse? Well, they do have $29 million in cap space. That's what they started with. Not too much money when you think of it. They do have a first-round pick at number 17. Kind of not an ideal place that you want to be at. But nonetheless, you look at some of their free agents like Josh Allen, the linebacker, corners Chris Claybooks and Trey Herndon, and receivers Calvin Ridley and Jamal Agnew. Obviously, the ones I'd be looking at were Josh Allen, the linebacker, and Calvin Ridley. So some of the moves that they already made was franchise tagging Josh Allen, re-signing guard Urza Cleveland and to a 3-year deal. They did make a couple of signings, like receiver Gabe Davis from the Buffalo Bills to a 3-year deal, and they signed Packers safety Darnold Savage to that same kind of deal to help their defense. And probably the most interesting move of all this offseason was a trade. In return for a 6th-round pick, the Jaguars decided to trade for Patriots quarterback Mac Jones. Yeah. The quarterback was in the same draft class as Trevor Lawrence. They traded for him in return for a 6th-round pick. Like, why? Like, why do they need Mac Jones? Like, I mean, I get it. Maybe Mac Jones wants a fresh start, but of all the teams that had interest in him, it was the Jaguars. I'm not surprised Tony Khan wants him. Maybe Mac Jones can go wrestle on Rampage or something. Go wrestle Orange Cassidy or who else is a jobber on Rampage? One of the best friends. One of the best friends on Rampage. Ray Phoenix. He can wrestle Ray Phoenix on Rampage, or someone on Collision. Either way, it's like, why? Maybe he just wants to get some experience on how to choke away a season. I don't know. Maybe, well, at least on a positive note, he just has an offensive-minded coach in Doug Peterson. I guess that's something. But anyway, I was looking at some of the needs that they still need to address this coming offseason or ongoing offseason. They got to address the interior offensive line. I mean, they did re-sign guard Urza Cleveland, but some of their other players are still very unreliable. So they got to look into finding eventual replacements in the draft. So use some of those picks to fix up the offensive line and look at addressing the quarterback spots. So one weakness I did mention was Jacksonville's passing defense, which was one of the worst in the league with how much they gave up to opposing receivers. So go and get some better starting corners. They did address the safety spot, but that's like within the deep middle of the field. So continue to address the secondary. Go and get yourself some starting corners. So even if the Jaguars weren't slated to go past the first round or the divisional playoffs in 2023, they still wouldn't have been runaway division champions. But instead, they now head into an offseason asking themselves what went wrong, monitoring what two ahead of schedule teams in the Colts and the Texans do to add to their successful seasons and competing for the crown next fall. So the Jaguars in 2023, you can consider it an all-elite meltdown from none other than the all-elite Jacksonville Jaguars. But I mean, I guess in all saying, you guess there's one person to blame, and that's Tony Khan, because he stands on big business with Mercedes Moné.